Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel Iturrate, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy.
Welcome back, Miguel Iturrate on the Lights Out podcast. And we're back. I'm joined by the MMA detective, Mike Davis, and we got the boss, Lights Out Lytle, waiting in the wings. He's got a guest. We're in Legends territory here, folks. Deep dive time. Mike, what do we got?
Okay. We got Mark Schultz, Olympic gold medalist, three-time collegiate national champion. Here's the thing about Mark. One, we're going to get into Rickson Gracie. Those two had a legendary grappling match. I think they're friends to this day. We're going to talk about Gary Goodridge. And then he also had a fake fight. He did a fixed fight with Antonio Inoki. Was involved in kind of just choreographing everything. It didn't really work out well, so we're really going to press on it. Like, I've heard him do interviews in regards to it, but he's never been questioned. It's like, here's a microphone, talk about it. We're going to question him. We're also going to talk about his collegiate and Olympic wrestling careers, and this is going to be about Mark. And I think it's going to be explosive, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be, we're going to go into some rough waters, and we're going to try to, navigate to port. That is our goal.
We deal with a lot of elite athletes here, but, just in terms of resume and credentials, this guy is cream of the crop. And that makes me psyched, even though he's not a pure MMA person. I think that his mindset and stuff that people are going to react to, that you're looking at the cream of the crop, like I said. So I'm looking forward to it. Mark, it's going to be explosive. Here, let's get into the plugs. I got December 3rd. I'm in Minnesota, Canterbury Park Expo. We're doing a grappling and mixed martial art event over 2 days, December 3rd and 4th. I'll be doing color commentary. December 17th, 115 Bourbon Street here in Chicago, Ignite FC. I'll be doing commentary there. And February 5th, Tampa, Florida, register through Smooth Camp. We are doing a jiu-jitsu tournament. I'll be hosting that. And also, more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, if you got a gambling Jones, you got some serious issues, you're kind of going to your kid's piggy bank to spend a couple dollars, betdsi.eu. They have odds on every major sporting event, including fights. If you use the promo code LytesOut, what happens is up to $1,000, they give you a 50% cash bonus on top of what you deposit, as long as you use our promo code. Diamond Sportsbook, it's betdsi.eu. And with that, I think we start our interview, Miguel. Yep. Well, one more plug. I mean, we're going down. We might as well go down drunk, and you might as well do it drinking Lights Out bourbon. Check out consfinewines.com. They're actually shipping in the United States, and that's Chris Lytle's name on a bottle of bourbon. It's a cool little project he has going on, and we always want to help out the boss. I can't help by drinking it anymore, so I got to plug it.
Okay.
Without further ado, Mark Schultz. I'm pumped up.
Have you ever thought about doing that?
Okay, everybody, deep dive time. Can't wait to do this one. This is a guy I'm sure you all know, love, seen for a long time. Just one of the great wrestlers we've had here, Mark Schultz. Mark, how the hell are you, brother?
I'm real good. I wish we would have recorded the stuff we were just talking about.
Oh, man, yeah. We'll go down more rabbit holes. Don't worry about it.
We're not trying to get canceled.
Yeah,
people were yelling at each other. It was awesome. I love it.
We try to leave no evidence.
I think we solved some problems, actually.
We created more, though. Okay, so I got Miguel and Mike up here. Got my buddies. Good. Everybody, they know a lot about the sport. Mike's going to run the interview. Mike, take it away.
All right. Well, first and foremost, I want to start this interview with something that I do not want you to be perceived as an insult, because it's not.
Don't worry, you can't insult me.
When you look at both of the Schultz brothers, your amazing, incredible brother Dave, what he did was incredible. right? I mean, that's an accurate description.
Yes, absolutely. I
Okay.
admit it. I
Now,
agree.
Chris, Miguel, what Mark did was impossible. So, and I'm not trying to say one is better than the other, but we're going to bring everybody through of why that is. And we're going to start from the beginning. And what the first question is, what year did you start wrestling? Like scholastically, did you start wrestling?
My junior year in high school.
Are you kidding me? You didn't start wrestling until then?
Mm-hmm. I
That's
was a
unbelievable.
gymnast. I was Northern California state gymnastics champion my sophomore year in high school. And I switched.
And you quit?
I quit.
You're a state champion. You quit and moved to wrestling?
I was Northern California state champion, not state champion. And yes, that's right. I quit gymnastics and transferred everything over into wrestling.
Gymnastics is another like elite sport, but weren't you getting a little big for it? Because those guys are usually a little more compact.
At the time that I quit, I was 123 pounds my sophomore year. And then my junior year, I started wrestling at 130 pounds. And then over my summer between my junior and senior year, I grew 30 pounds to a 159 pounder.
Okay. You transferred your junior year to Oregon and then came back your senior year to California, to Palo Alto. Why did you transfer?
Because I got kicked off the team because I couldn't win in competition. I had just started wrestling and I thought it was kind of like gymnastics, where if you just learn the technique and execute the technique perfectly, that it would work. But that's not the way it is. You have to put explosive power behind these moves to make them work. And I didn't get that until my senior year. So my record, my junior year in high school was 4 wins, 6 losses at the semester. And then the coach kicked me off the team and replaced me with a second string guy. And I went to the principal and complained because he created a challenge match system to make the team. And I complied with his system. And I honestly made the team under his system, which was a brutal system, by the way. But anyway, we had matches every single week to make the team. But I was so intense about trying to win my challenge matches to maintain my spot that I was just kind of burned out when it came time to compete. And so plus I had just started, so I didn't really know, how to win or anything. So my record, my junior year, was 4 and 6 at the semester. And then the coach kicked me off the team and I
what did he kick you off the team for? Was it over the principal?
He kicked me off the team because I wasn't winning enough. And there was a guy that was at my weight that I kept beating to make the team, who was second in the district, that he thought would do better if he was varsity. So I went and complained to the principal, and the principal forced the coach to put me back on varsity. But because I went and talked to the principal, it destroyed our relationship, and I couldn't wrestle at Ashland High anymore. So that's why I transferred back to live with my dad in Palo Alto, California.
You know what's amazing to me is like one of my favorite things about wrestling there was it doesn't matter the coach. There's no choices. Whoever wins the wrestle off, that's who wrestles. You know what I mean? But your coach didn't go through that. That's the most bizarre. I've never heard of that happening.
Well, it's funny because I came back as Olympic champion. I got the key to the city, and he showed up at the ceremony, and it was kind of awkward. But I
tell him to get on. Moving along, keep going.
Well,
okay. Another question, real quick. I mean, what made you be so time committed, so much investment, so dedicated to gymnastics to be that good, and then just be like, I'm done with this? I mean, what goes on in your head? Why would you want to just give all that up and go to wrestling? I've never heard of that.
Because gymnastics was not giving me what I needed to be happy with myself.
Okay.
I have the I could do incredible acrobatic tricks. I could do 2.5 twisting, 1.5 backs off the 3-meter board, but I couldn't talk to girls. That was a big thing. And I had no confidence in my ability to defend myself. And my brother, I just happened to be born in the same family is the greatest high school wrestler in history. And my brother, he was incredibly confident. And, I quit gymnastics and I didn't go right into wrestling at the time. I went into Tang Sudo, which is a Chuck Norris style of martial art.
Korean.
And I was really good because I was flexible from gymnastics. I could kick over the top of people's heads. I could do all kinds of incredible acrobatic tricks and stuff. And so I took like 4 months of Tang Sudo. And then my brother, I was still living in Ashland, and my brother comes up from Palo Alto to hang out with me for my birthday. And he knew how to get under my skin. And he said something really disrespectful. And I thought, okay, now I'm going to teach this guy who's the real boss of the family with my 4 months of Tang Sudo. So we go out in the front lawn, and I took a swing at him, and he double-legged me, got the mount, and pounded me into bloody submission. And I was so humiliated. I slept in the car that night. But the next day, I was like, screw Tang Sudo, I'm going out for the wrestling team.
I got a question now. I hope I'm not off on this, but isn't Gary Goodridge your future opponent, Tang Sudo representative?
No, he's
Silwan. Okay, thank you.
Those two get mixed up a lot.
Yeah, no, they didn't me. I'll cut that. Sorry about that.
Hey, Chris, if we had an over-under on how much broken furniture was in the Schultz house,
Oh my God.
it'd be up there. That number would be up there.
Are you talking about like dollars worth?
I'm talking actual pieces of furniture broken.
That'd be a rough one. Flipping off them, breaking them. Okay. Mark, I had a question for you, totally kind of off the subject there, but I know we were talking earlier. I was talking with Mike, and we're talking about, in the Olympic caliber, you get up to the highest of the worlds and all that. It seems like a lot of the Muslim type countries and Russian and those things, like they seem to fare very well. And me and Mike were talking about it, and I theorized maybe it had to do with the fact that in America, we do like high school folk style and collegiate for a long time and then try and transfer over. What do you think is the reason for their like dominance a lot of times?
You mean like Russia and Iran and those two countries?
Yeah, they tend to do. Yeah, they do really well. Is it just because we practice it a different way for so long, or are they just different? You know what I mean?
No, they have an incredible amount of respect for wrestlers in those countries. They're treated like. I have a friend right here in Medford, Oregon. Matter of fact, I brought. He's Iranian, and I brought Mansour Barzagar to America, who's Iran's first world champion ever. Now he's living in the same city with me. And when he won the world championships, they just gave him a copper mine. Like, here, have this. And he took the money he made from that and he bought commercial buildings, apartment complexes, hotels, stadiums. He owns a stadium. I mean, the amount, if I had that kind of incentive, I probably could have wrestled another 5 years. I might have won 2 or 3 more world titles, but we didn't have any of that. There was no support for us. And it's so hard. You have to sacrifice everything to spend all your time training.
Do you think the case of now we have the Soviet Union breaking up to like Russia, Ukraine, the Kazakhs, Georgians, they all wrestle. Do you think they're still strong because of the old Russian system too? Does that system impress you from, way back when? Yeah.
That tradition of treating wrestlers look at the people in government over there. They're wrestlers. The tradition of treating wrestlers like very high status, like almost gods, is not going away just because the country broke up politically. The culture is still there.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So you just think it's just like the mindset and like the community understanding of what wrestling is.
Yeah,
it's not technique. It's not style.
It's the understanding by the community. Because like over here in America, wrestling, it's really hard to appreciate it unless you've done it, unless you've gone through it, you've learned the techniques, you've trained to understand how hard it is. Over there, they know and they respect that.
The culture.
I mean, the difference is Mark should be a national hero. Like, I mean, that's the kind of thing the Olympic champions over there are. And Mark, obviously to us, he's a hero of mine, but I don't know that fame extends itself in our country. I think that's a little bit of it, no?
I mean, look who we're making heroes. Mark Zuckerberg.
Hulk Hogan.
Some basketball players.
There's a lot of jealousy, especially now. Well, now because the UFC is exposed how good wrestling is as a martial art, wrestlers are getting a lot more status and attention than they used to. But it used to be, when I was competing, it was like you wrestled in some basement, and no funding, and it's just you and a couple of your friends down there and then you just had to raise money to go travel to the state championship or something. I mean, it was very difficult. It's just
okay. So
hold on real quick. You know what scares me is I was coaching wrestling not too long ago, a few years ago. And it's like, wrestling in this country, I believe people are becoming weaker and weaker, and just the mentality is not there. And it's nerve coded. People actually come out and be like, "Why don't you come out for the wrestling?" You're like, "It's too tough." I mean, when I was in school, you couldn't say that you had to make up an excuse like, I'm playing basketball. Oh, I got to get a job. They'll just come out and say, "That's too tough." We're not mentally tough enough to do this sport here anymore. Very few are. Even the toughest ones aren't as tough as the old school guys. So it's very scary to me that like that mentality is totally almost gone from this country. You have pockets of where there is some really good guys, but it's not in our culture anymore. We're just turning into too weak of a country, in my opinion.
Yeah, our country's DNA.
It's sad. It's scary, man. That's why Dagestan, Uzbekistan, they're just going to whip our ass, man. It's not going to be good in the future.
Was there a question in there?
No, I'm just making a comment, man.
It was more like therapy. We're actually just listening to Chris so he feels better.
No, you're right. I just had to throw that out there, man. No, it just kills me, bugs me.
No, you're right.
Yeah. So
do you notice that in college? I mean, you're at BYU now. Do you notice that some of the people that your new recruits, they're a little softer than they were, let's say, 10 years ago?
Oh, BYU dropped the wrestling program.
Oh, that's right. I did know that. Where are you coaching now?
Just that.
I have my own jiu-jitsu camp wrestling business. I do all over the country. I'm going to have a Mark Schultz Invitational in New Jersey here pretty soon.
Oh, sweet.
That's good.
Nice.
All right. So we've got questions in regards to like your MMA career. And although, it starts May 17th, 1996, but you started jiu-jitsu with Pedro Sauer a few years prior to that. What was your introduction to Pedro Sauer? How did you guys meet?
Oh, this is a really good story. I was a wrestling coach, assistant coach at BYU, and I'm sitting in my home one day, and I get a phone call. And it's a guy named Steve Bishop, who's a LDS missionary in Brazil, who met Pedro Sauer in Brazil and convinced him to move to Provo, Utah, of all places. And he's one of only 2 non-Gracie family member black belts. And so when the Gracies moved to America, most of them settled in LA, but Pedro moved to Provo to have a separate club. And so I get a call from Steve Bishop, and he says, "Hey, Mark, the greatest jiu-jitsu fighter in the world is in town." He's talking about Rickson Gracie. He goes, "Do you want to fight him?" And I asked him, "What are the rules?" And this guy, I could just kill him for saying this. He goes, he's trying to intimidate me. He goes, "There are no rules." And I was like, "Really? No rules at all? What are we going to do? Commit a homicide?" So I wasn't going to back down. I'm not going to. I'm like, "Yeah, I'll fight him. Tell him to come to the BYU wrestling room, a week from Thursday or whatever, and we'll fight it out."
This is kind of like a grammar school thing.
For no money or nothing. Just sure. Is that what it is?
Meet you at the playground after school.
The guy lied. This is what pisses me off the most. It wasn't anything like this guy said, but the way he set it up created such antagonism and opposition between me and Rickson. It was very difficult for us to overcome that. And
was it the same on his end? Was it the same on his end, or was it just kind of coming from you because you're obviously pretty alpha?
What do you mean this coming from?
Well, here, was Rickson under the same mindset that you requested no rules?
No. Matter of fact, he's even said, he's been on record. He goes, it didn't feel like it should have happened. And I know now why, because of the way this idiot tried to intimidate me and set this whole thing up. Like we're enemies all of a sudden, Well, it turned out we became great friends. But I didn't. Anyway, what happened was I have to wait. I have to go to the NCAA, so I can't even think straight. I'm thinking about this the whole week. I don't know who this guy is. And I'm like, what's going to happen? Am I going to have to gouge his eyes out, bite his throat out? I don't know.
Rip his heart out.
Whatever it takes to win, I'm not going to. So I was just like, all right. So the day finally comes. And I walk in the BYU wrestling room, and I see Rickson on his butt scooting towards Alan Albright, my boss. He was the head wrestling coach, and he's trying to hook his heels. And as soon as I walk in, everybody stops what they're doing. Rickson stands up. He comes over to me, and I can see he's got really thick cauliflower ears. I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. So he goes, "Are you the guy?" I go, "Yeah, I'm the guy. Are you the guy?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm the guy." And he goes, "What I do," I can't really imitate a Brazilian accent, but it's like, "What I do is I elbow, I knee, I headbutt, I punch, I kick. But today we're just going to submission grappling until one of us taps out." And I was like, thank God there's not going to be a homicide. So we go at it, and I take him down. He stands in the middle of the room, just standing straight up, and he just goes like this. And I was like, okay, here we go. And so I tack him, I take him down. I got him in a cradle for about 20 minutes. And finally,
were you talking to him? Were you talking to him while he's in the cradle? Were you talking smack?
No, I never talked to anybody I wrestled.
20 minutes in the cradle. No conversation.
There's no conversation.
Wow.
That's intense, man.
That's
finally my grip just gave out. 20 minutes in a cradle is a hell of a long time to hold your grip. And he threw both of his legs around my upper body, and I didn't know what he was doing. And I kind of let him do it because I wanted to this didn't make any sense to me. I'm a wrestler, we never did anything like this. So he throws his legs over and goes for a triangle, and he gets me in a triangle, and I tap out. And I was like, wow, that was pretty cool. And so I go, let's go again. And so we went again, and I'm on top of him for about another 20 minutes. Now, I don't have any jiu-jitsu training. This is my first jiu-jitsu experience, and it's against the best guy in the world. And so anyway, I'm trying to make up moves on the fly. I knew I broke the Turk's arm in the Olympics with a double wrist lock. So I knew
we'll get there.
And I knew to keep my chin down and my elbows in from some judo training I had in Colorado Springs. And so that was pretty much the only thing I knew, because if you don't practice these moves, you can't do them. And if you look at all the moves in jiu-jitsu, they're against all the rules of wrestling. As a matter of fact, if you open up a wrestling rule book and you read it and you see all the moves that are against the rules, it's like a jiu-jitsu instruction manual. So I'm like making stuff up on the fly, and I've been on top of him for 40 minutes now, and I can't get anything. Of course, he's an expert at staying out of submission holds. That's all he does. So he stayed out of all my attempts, and I'm on top of him. And I thought, man, I've been on top of this guy the whole time, and I can't get anything on this guy. Maybe I should let him get on top of me. So I let him reverse me. And me being a wrestler, I had brainwashed myself to go belly down. So I turned belly down. I got my arms out like I'm trying to keep from getting turned in freestyle. And he just... dumbest thing he could do, right? And he just starts weaving in this rear naked, and finally he's got it, and I'm tapping out again. And after that, I was just like stunned that I had never even considered anything like this even existing before. And I loved Rickson. He said something to me that made me love him. He goes, Mark, you're the toughest guy I've ever gone against. I was like, I love you, man. So anyway,
here, devil's advocate. You went 40 minutes with the guy without knowing submission defense, and you didn't get submitted.
Well, I did twice.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, but you went a 40-minute span and then a 20-minute span.
No, it was 20 minutes and then
20.
Okay, 2020. Okay, fair enough.
What I find interesting is, the
4
wrestlers,
rounds, Chris.
the wrestlers are always in the mind game, Like, this is the first challenge match I've ever heard of any Gracie that Mark said, bring him down to my school. You know what I mean? That's so cool. He already was dominating the mind game there with the wrestling, with the wrestling mindset. I like that because everybody else goes to the Gracie Academy, not this time. That's cool. You were in the ball game.
All right. So
anyway,
how does that session end?
Huh?
How does that session progress from there?
Okay, so after it's over, I find out that he's got a student of his, Pedro Sauer, one of his black belts, right there living in Provo. And so I call up Pedro one day and I say, Pedro, can I be your student? He's like, oh yeah, come on down. My friend, come on down. And so I became a student for like 3 years prior to the UFC, which was a huge advantage because Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu had just come to America. So nobody knew it. So I was going to be one of the few guys to know this. And I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the most effective standalone martial art that there is. I mean, wrestling's very close. And the combination of wrestling and Jiu-Jitsu together is 10 times better than either one separately. But I knew, because I was one of the few people that knew Jiu-Jitsu, that when I fought in the UFC, I was going to have a huge advantage.
Okay. So, we were going to get to this later on, but I think we should address it now. So Mark Coleman, one of our mutual friends, obviously, that's how I got your phone number.
He's awesome.
All right. So you got to look at it this way. The Gracie family and wrestlers such as yourself and Mark, you guys are pretty much cut from the same cloth. You did a combat, grueling, gritty, dirty, filthy sport for love, knowing that there really wasn't ever going to be a payday at the end of the rainbow. Just, personal pride. And Rickson 100% obviously falls into that category as well. It just so happened that jiu-jitsu really took off. But his running the course was done so for personal pride, much like yourself and Mark. So you've trained with both.
Both.
A well-trained, focused Pride Grand Prix Mark Coleman, a well-trained, focused Rickson Gracie in a fight. Who wins?
I'm not going to answer that question. No.
Okay. Mark's going to listen to this, just so I know. You'll probably see him before you see Rickson.
I love Mark. I think Mark is probably the bravest person I've ever met. I mean, he proved he was the toughest guy on earth one time at Pride. He beat the toughest, biggest, baddest dudes on the planet in one day, in one tournament. I mean, you got to have incredible guts to do that. And he did it, man.
John Fitch, who trained with Mark, said if headbutts were still legal today, that Mark could still be wearing that UFC world title. That's what he said. Today.
You're talking about Mark Coleman?
Coleman, yeah.
Okay,
if headbutts were still legal.
But I got a great amount of respect for Rickson because that match he had against that black dude, Zulu, I think his name was.
Yeah.
Anyway, that match really had an impact on me. There's a couple of different matches that had an impact on me. One was fictional. It was that Charles Bronson fight in Hard Times. Remember that?
That prison movie?
No, it was about a guy living in the Depression, didn't have any money, goes into some town, comes out of nowhere, goes into town and starts betting on himself to win these nose barred fist fights, bare knuckle fist fights. And anyway, I just thought that was, it wasn't real. I thought it was really intense if it could have been real. And then here, we are, whatever, how many years later, 30 years later, actually doing it for real. And here's Mark Coleman and Rickson actually doing it for real. And when Rickson faced Zulu, I looked at him so closely. I studied him so close, and I saw just the way his body language and everything. He was so confident going in, and actually, and I watched the way he fought. He kind of backed up, and then when the guy got too close, he would close the distance so he didn't get hit with any strikes. And he was so close, that the strikes didn't really hurt him. So I tried to model my style after Rickson's, and
fair enough.
Anyway, they're both great, man.
Okay, could Rickson, if you wanted to stand and not go to the ground, could Rickson take you down?
No.
Okay, I believe. Dude, you're one of the best in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's not like it's wow. Okay. Okay. I know Mark and I are gonna have a conversation about this later on, and I'm trying to eliminate any of the ways around how a fight would go. So that's one for Mark.
Jiu-jitsu is amazing for submissions, but wrestling is vastly superior in takedowns
and positioning. Yeah, for positioning. Yeah, the hips in wrestling are incredible for sure. All right. So Pedro Sauer, Chael Sonnen, obviously one of your former students. Chael Sonnen has got a couple different, little vignettes on that of yourself. And he talks about how you got your black belt. Now, we heard Chael talk about it, but we haven't heard your version of it. Would you mind telling us what that is?
Yeah, I was in Pedro's club for a long time, and he advanced me up to a blue belt. I think after 3 years, I was a blue belt. And, but I was beating everybody. And after the UFC, he was in my corner at the UFC. And after the UFC, I said, Pedro, you got to give me a black belt. And he goes, yeah. Well, he never did give me one. So I went and started training with Walt Bayless. You know who Walt Bayless is?
Sure.
He's a very tough guy out of Utah. Anyway, he's really big. He's in great condition. He's got all kinds of submission holds, leg locks, heel hooks. He was the first guy to really show me a lot of different heel hooks and leg locks. And he's a combination of sambo and
sambo guy.
Yeah. And he gave me a black belt. And after like 2 weeks. And
it's not bad. It's not bad.
Blue to black. Never heard of it.
No, and so I was just like, okay, so anyway, then I started my own club at Midvale Athletic Club, and I wore a black belt in that club. But I would never disrespect Pedro by wearing a different color belt than he gave me. And he gave me a black belt. But at the time, I wouldn't disrespect him. He's a great man, great instructor. I love the guy. And I couldn't do that to him.
So Chael's
you brought your
stretching the truth
black
a little
belt.
bit. So Chael's stretching the truth a little bit?
Well, he said that I walked into his club wearing a black belt, saying,
challenged everybody.
Yeah, saying, if you can take it away from me, you can have it. Well, that's what Walt Bayless told me about what a black belt means. He's like, look, you can wear whatever belt you want. If people can take it away from you, they can have it. And so I went out, and with Walt, we bought a black belt, $6 at the martial arts store, and I wear it in the BYU wrestling room, and I'm wearing it at Midvale Athletic Club. And Chael asked me, how'd you get your black belt? I go, well, I went down to the store and paid $6. And if anybody can take it away from me, they can have it.
That's cool.
All right. So you had mentioned
pretty close.
Yeah. So you had mentioned early Sambo roots. Did you know Richard Hamilton, Mark Coleman's original trainer?
No.
Okay, so Richard Hamilton, we addressed it with Mark. He was like the witness protection program, wasn't even in his real name, was always in Mark's corner. FBI shows up for some child sex trafficking stuff, and then Mark never sees Richard Hamilton again. So, there's MMA at this time had a lot of kind of interesting characters, most of them fictional, but it didn't mean there was a good story attached to them. So you had mentioned Gary Goodridge, May 17th, 1996, UFC Detroit, UFC 9 in Detroit.
May 16th.
Was it May 16th? You sure?
Yes.
Come on, Mike. Come on.
Mark, we got to take a time
You get one a show, and that was it.
I get one mulligan every single show, and I'll get you your high school girlfriend's name and the dog that you kicked around as a kid, and then I just screw up a little thing like this, and then Chris and Miguel never this is all I hear about.
That's all we focus on. Dude.
It's the only thing that matters.
It's only the date of the UFC, Mike. It's just a little thing. No, I'm just kidding.
The number 6 and 7 are right next to each other. My fat friggin' fingers, hit the wrong button. May 16th. Thank you for your correction, Mark. 1996. We've got a theory about this that's kind of wacky, and we kind of cornered our Davey on it, and he pretty much agreed with us. Why don't you bring us through your version of UFC 9, and then we'll pose our theory to you.
What you mean, like how it happened? How
it happened? Yeah, just talk about how it happened and the ramifications of that.
Okay. Well, I get a call from Pedro one day, and he said, Dave Beneteau, who's either national heavyweight champion of Canada or
Pedro who? Pedro Sauer.
Pedro Sauer. Yeah.
Okay.
Whenever I say Pedro, I mean Pedro Sauer.
Cool.
And sometimes they call him Professor Sauer. Anyway, Dave Beneteau, he wants to come down and train with Pedro before UFC 9. And Pedro calls me and asks me if I'll train with him. And I said, yeah, sure. So he comes down, and we trained together for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, I picked him up and slammed him, and his metacarpal rolled and broke his finger and broke his hand and his finger right here. I took him to the hospital, and the doctors said, obviously, if we put a cast on, you can't fight. But if we put
how far outside of the event was this?
What?
How far away from the fight was this?
I'd say 3 weeks.
Oh.
So, yeah, I felt pretty bad. But things turned out good for me anyway. Anyway.
That's what's important.
Yeah. Screw everybody else.
Hey, Dave Beneteau's fine. Don't worry about him.
Yeah.
No, Dave's great. So I said, I'm going to go to Detroit with you to be your cornerman because I think you're going to get in trouble with that hand. And so I did. And when we went to the press conference, somebody ratted Dave out and said his hand was hurt or broken.
Hey, it was you, wasn't it?
It wasn't me. No, it wasn't.
Old lady, wasn't me.
I mean, I might have put the word out and it might have got around and it came back around. No, I'm kidding. I didn't do that. I did not do that. I did not do that.
That's cool. That's cool. We'll make sure the word gets out correctly. I don't want you mad at me.
Dave, if you're listening, I did not do it. So the doctor came over and looked at Dave's hand and said, I'm not going to let you fight. So everybody kind of turned and looked at me. And I had told Dave at the hospital, I said, if you can't fight, I'm going to try and take your place. And so when we went to Detroit, I went over to Bob Meyerowitz. It was UFC was owned by Bob Meyerowitz before. I think Dana White bought it the very next UFC after that.
No, it was a while. It was a while. It was a while. It was like UFC 31, 32.
Oh, was it 31 or 30? Okay.
Yeah, it was right after Japan.
Okay. My bad.
It's okay.
Anyway, I went over to Bob Meyerowitz and I said, what do you think about me taking Dave's place? And I swear to God, he said this, and I quote, "Oh, that's a great idea. You're Olympic champion. When you lose, it'll be even better."
What an asshole.
Well, was it said tactfully at least, or
No, it was just as disrespectful as you could. They didn't know what wrestling was. I was the first Olympic wrestling champion to walk in there, and they didn't know really what wrestling was as a martial art, and they certainly didn't know what I knew, which was the combination of wrestling and jiu-jitsu together. And so,
oh, you were the wild card. If you had been thrown in one of the tournaments with the Gracie on the other side, obviously with the Pedro Sauer connection, it wouldn't have happened. But I mean, you had the Rubik's Cube solved. Yeah, for sure.
I was really lucky. I mean, really. And so I said, well, I need to think about it overnight. And then we started negotiating a purse, and we finally came to an agreement, 50,000 to win, 25 to lose. But I was the highest paid guy in there besides Shamrock and Severn. They got the same as I did. But there was a guy from Brazil in there who got like 5,000 to win, nothing to lose. Probably end up with the hospital bill.
Nothing.
It was the real primordial days of the UFC. So
he's helping prove our point, by the way. Our theory is about to come full circle. Go ahead. I'm celebrating already. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, so they call me during the night. I'm trying to get some sleep, and they're calling me like 4 times during the night, waking me up. We need a decision. Finally, I'm like, hey, man, you guys are going to destroy my ability to fight if you keep calling me like this. And finally, at 10 in the morning, they called and they said, look, we got to have a decision right now. Or we're getting someone else. So I went downstairs. I got Pedro to go with me, and we went down to the lobby, and we met with Meyerowitz and Davies, and I said, give me one more minute. And so I went over to this corner. This is 4 months after my brother was murdered. I went over to this corner and I started praying, like, what should I do? And I felt like either Christ or my brother or something was telling me, something was behind me, like telling me I had to do this. So I got up, I turned around, I told Pedro I'm doing it, and we signed the contract. And then me and Pedro went out and back of the hotel, and I did some wind sprints and just to warm up. And then I bought a cup, and one of the guys just happened to bring wrestling shoes. That's one thing that people don't realize. There was only 2 rules in that UFC: no biting, no eye gouging. But there was a 3rd rule, and that was if you decided to wear shoes, you weren't allowed to kick.
Yeah.
So I decided, and this guy brought shoes. I didn't bring any wrestling shoes, but this guy brought a size 10 wrestling shoe. I mean, of all the sizes he could have brought, what are the chances? That's my size. So I decided that I needed traction because my style requires traction. So I thought, I'm going to wear the shoes and not kick. So, and then I went and got an AIDS test, and
that's a quick turnaround.
8 hours later, I was in the octagon fighting.
Okay. Well, let's rewind just a little bit. At the pre-fight meeting.
Oh yeah, I know what you're gonna say about the closed fist and the open fist.
Was it clearly like, guys, we just got to say this, it's all bullshit, or was it serious?
What do you mean bullshit? What?
Well, Art Davie said that. We interviewed Art Davie, and phenomenal interview. And in essence, he said they had to say it in the rules meeting about no closed fist striking.
Oh, yeah.
We'll fine you every time. Wink, wink. I mean, was that as plain as day that they were just saying, trying to appease the judge?
Well, this is what happened. They went to court. The lawyers, which know nothing about fighting, are arguing over the rules of what should occur during this event. And they come up with some compromise that there'll be no closed fist punching allowed. Okay. And so that was the new rule. Well, they never defined what a closed fist was in court. And so when Big John McCarthy comes around and he comes into my little section of the tent and he goes, okay, now we have a new rule. There's not going to be any closed fist punches. And I was like, really? Wow, I'm going to win for sure. Because, you know, I don't. So
hey, you're fighting a guy with heavy hands. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Gary is a brutal monster. Anyway, he goes, now show me a closed fist. And I went like this. He goes, now show me an open fist. And I went like this. And he goes, no, this is closed. This is open. And if you violate the rules, we're going to fine you $50 per violation. But as far as when we'll collect, it'll just be whenever.
Okay. All right.
So punch all you want.
Essentially. Right. Okay. All right. Now, Mark, I'm going to ask you a question. We believe that your payday in regards to the $50,000, you said it in a preface leading up to this, that you were making the same as both Shamrock and Severn. This UFC 9 is known as the dance in Detroit because Ken and Dan, thank you, both said, oh, we just can't break rules. And they danced for like 35 minutes or however long the time was. And I think Dan got a takedown with the last 15 seconds and they raised his hand. Do you think, first off, did they know how much you were getting paid?
Who?
Dan and Ken prior to stepping into the cage.
I don't think they ever knew how much I was getting paid prior or during or after.
Okay. At the lead-in of UFC 9, they say how much you were getting paid.
Okay.
So I have to assume that either they had talked to you or that somebody did, because our belief is that they were kind of mad that you were getting as much money as them.
Oh.
So they pretty much just did this little dance and kind of.
That's the reason they did that?
Huh?
That's the reason they stalled for the 30 minutes?
But we asked our Dave.
Because of what I was paid?
Well,
that's a theory. They're mad.
We asked our. Wait, Mark, just hear us out. And if you don't believe it, dude, hey, what are we going to argue with you? So we asked our Davey about, was there like almost a renegotiation with those two in regards to the purse after it was announced how much you were getting paid? And he said that they weren't happy.
I don't think anybody knew what I was getting paid up until the time of the fight. I mean, the last minute replacement. How could they find out that it's a confidential contract?
We asked Art what he believes in regards to that, and he goes, he's like, it's possible. He's like, it's absolutely possible. Hey, plus, those two, they don't really have, they have some questionable things in their background in regards to some of their fights. I think it kind of all comes into play.
Well, I know Dan really well. He was on the world team with me in '85. I think if you asked him, he'd just tell you.
About his fake fights?
About whether or not me getting paid, or if he found out about it, or it affected his match with Shamrock in some way.
So what is your theory on why that fight went down like that? They just didn't want to break the rules, even though everybody else before them had? Or why else would they do that? What is your theory? Do you have a theory?
I don't really care about that fight.
Most people
don't.
No
one does. It was horrible. Yeah.
Most people don't. It's not a good one.
Miguel, you're muted.
Hey, I'm sorry. I want to jump in with a related question before Mike moves on. And, like a lot of the people we interview, you're, an older gentleman now, and you're coming across obviously very calm and very confident, stuff like that. But you probably were a lot meaner back then. You know what I mean? So my question is, I know Bob Meyerowitz. Bob Meyerowitz, tall guy wearing a suit. He used to be a boxer. Or claimed to be a boxer, very arrogant and stuff. How close was he to getting an ass whooping from you when he told you he wanted you to lose?
He didn't say he wanted me to lose.
Yeah,
You said you were going to.
It'll be even better when you lose.
yeah. I mean, how close was he to catch him?
Did it cross your mind?
He clearly deserved it.
I don't know anything about Bob. All I knew is he was supposed to pay me, and I wasn't going to fight with him, with the guy who was going to pay me.
Smart man.
Yeah,
Smart.
okay. That's all business, and that's a good way to think about it. Just a little Bob Meyerowitz anecdote from the Art Davie interview is he used to claim to have been, potentially one of the people in the running to be the first Jewish world champion, and Art Davie was like, "What about Max Baer?" Boxing heavyweight champion, and there was one in the 30s, so he was way off. He didn't even know what he was talking about.
Yeah, there's been a lot of great Jewish athletes,
Sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Anyway,
for sure.
Mike, take it away. Sorry.
Okay. So did Art Davie have to call BYU and get it cleared through the school?
No.
He claims he did. Okay.
He
All right,
claims
let's
he
move-
did?
It's what we said in our interview.
That makes no sense.
Well, I mean, he's older.
Mhm.
So after that was in 1996. You take quite a long hiatus.
I did actually have to ask permission from BYU, the athletic director, to do that.
Oh, you did that.
I did.
Okay. Well, maybe that's what he said. I think maybe that's therein lied the confusion. But you had to make a phone call for sure. For sure.
Our athletic director was an All-American wrestler, so I had a pretty good relationship.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it makes it easy. That makes it a lot easier. So in essence, that is really your only MMA fight, except you get wrangled into a 3-ring circus.
Oh yeah, that thing's just fake,
Okay, so this is fantastic.
Jungle fight.
It's fantastic. So let me set the table before you, let me set the table before you go off on your tangent, because this is going to be a long rant. September 13th, 2003, Jungle Fight 1. The promoters, Wallid Ishmael and Inoki, both of them teamed together in order to pull up Jungle Fight 1 against Leopoldo Montenegro. How you've got 7 years in between fights. How does this conversation even begin, and how do you end up where it is that in Brazil, middle of nowhere?
I'll be happy to tell you. I got a call from Hideki Hata, who's an NCAA wrestling champion and friend of mine and my brother's. He's a really close friend of my brother's. And he was either in Japan or he was on a conference call with Jiichiro Date, who's the Olympic wrestling champion in 1976.
Necesito 5 de cambio.
These guys, Date is probably the greatest, he may be the greatest wrestler that ever lived. When he won in 76, I mean, it's so dominating. I mean, every single time he wants to score, he just scores at will. It's incredible. And anyway, I had incredible respect for him. And, I also have incredible respect for Tadaki because he's NCAA champion. So these two Japanese guys call me up one day and they say, "Hey, Mark, do you want to make $25,000 doing a fake pro wrestling match?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure."
No brainer.
25. I was going through a divorce too, and I was just broke. And so this was gonna save me. So we set this thing up. I go fly to Japan, and Inoki tells me that if
Wait, so they wanted to negotiate in person?
yeah, I guess so. I'm not sure what the purpose of bringing me to Japan was exactly, but I thought it was because Inoki told me that if I did this fight, that he would make me a New Japan Pro Wrestling superstar like Steve Williams, who was my teammate at Oklahoma. And, Steve was a heavyweight. He was 270 pounds,
Yeah.
I'm, 205 soaking wet. So I look a lot different. But anyway,
Sorry, Steve Williams, Dr. Death.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Death. And I am, in a way, being an Olympic world champion and stuff is kind of a little bit of a liability or vulnerability, because you tend to believe that everybody treats you with a certain level of respect and honor. And it never occurred to me that anybody would try to take advantage of me in the way that Inoki did. And he basically lied to me. And he told me that if I did this, he would bring me to Japan and make me a New Japan Pro Wrestling superstar. So I agreed to do it. And then I got on the website the day before I was supposed to go down there. And I'm thinking everything's all set up. They're going to have my opponent and me get together before. We're going to stage the thing. We're going to create a script. It's all going to be organized with, the Inoki family, his sister and son-in-law, and everybody's going to help me organize this thing. And so I leave to Brazil with all these assumptions.
Who did you go with? Who was your corner?
His name was Mike Coleman. He ended up being an executive producer on the movie Foxcatcher. And he was a brother of one of my wrestlers, Jared Coleman at BYU.
Cool.
Anyway, thank God that he went there, because I needed a witness because what happened down there was so screwed up. It was unbelievable. I went onto the website one day before I saw what was going on, before I was supposed to leave. And I saw that Rico Chipparelli is scheduled for a match down there. Well, I have wrestled Rico Chipparelli 6 times. And it just didn't make sense that him and I would be on the same card, because I know he's doing a real fight. I mean, I don't know it like somebody told me, but I just believed that at the time. And as I looked at this card that they're having, I'm like, I wonder how many of these guys are real and which are fake. I've never even heard of an event where they mix fake wrestling, pro wrestling matches in with real MMA fights.
They did in Japan, though. I mean, they did, but you didn't hear about it. So go ahead.
So anyway, this is my first experience. I don't know what's going on. I get down there, and they put us on a boat, and we drive down the Nile into this super secluded island in the middle of nowhere.
You mean the Amazon? You went down the Amazon.
And now I am stuck on this island with no
Wait. This is where it gets good. How long of a boat ride down the Amazon was it?
Probably an hour or 2.
Were there any other Americans on that boat with you? Because I knew.
Well, I don't know about that particular boat, but when we got to the island, Rico Chipparelli was there.
So you actually got boated over with a very young Stephan Bonner and his coach at the time, Jeff Neal.
I don't know.
They sat next to you. You guys are the only ones speaking English. And Jeff, through my research, I talked to Jeff, and he goes, "Oh, yeah, it was a fake fight." He's like, "Yeah, it was a fake fight, and it was very confusing." He's like, "It wasn't the only fake fight on the card. There was like a Korean guy versus like a Japanese guy." He said, "But Mark went over there with the mindset that it was pretend, and you had a different opponent rather than the one." And this is his words. Obviously, I don't know. He said that you had a different opponent, and they switched it to Leopoldo Montenegro, like upon arrival. Is that correct?
I don't think that's right.
Okay. He knew it was fake. Like, he called me up. He's like, "Yeah, it was a fake fight." So
yeah, I thought everybody knew. I thought the whole show was going to be fake. But when I saw Rico Chipparelli,
Did you talk to him?
Yeah.
At the event?
I found out. And I go, hey, you know, and I mean, I didn't even have to ask him. I could tell just by the fact that he was there that this is going to be, he's going to fight a real fight, which meant that they were mixing real fights with fake fights.
Yeah.
And that had never even occurred to me that you could do that or anybody would do that. So before I left, I called up Inoki, and he can't speak English. And I said, hey, is this a real fight or is it a fake fight? And he goes, it's real. And I said, well, you know how old I am, right? And I said, I haven't been training, you know. And he said, well, you can still do a fake fight, but we're not going to pay you $25,000. We'll pay you $5,000, and you got to make it look real. And so I said, well, but he said, if you do it, I'm going to bring it to Japan and make you a star in the New Japan Pro Wrestling League. So that convinced me to go do it. But when I get down there, turns out Montenegro doesn't know this is a fake fight. He thinks this is real. And my opponent.
How did that conversation go? Because there had to have been a translator. Like, this is a mess. How does the conversation with Montenegro go?
Okay, after I found out that nobody knew this was supposed to be fake except me and Inoki and Coleman. I was walking into a fucking like a meat grinder. And so I said to Mike, my corner man, I said, we got to get to the bottom of this, and we've got to figure out what we're going to do, because there's no way I can compete. I mean, at this this level of conditioning. And so he got Wallid Ishmael together with Inoki's son, with my corner man, the referee, and Montenegro. And we all sat down at a picnic table. And I said, look, you guys, I've been deceived. They told me that this thing is a fake pro wrestling match. And Montenegro broke down and was almost crying. And I don't know if he was relieved because of all the crap I was saying. I thought I was acting like a pro wrestler. I'm going to be.
That would scare me too. Truth be told, that would bother me. Yeah.
So anyway, Wallid Ishmael's like, well, my guy, he's not going to lose intentionally to anybody, blah, blah, blah. And so I go, well, we got to figure out what to do here. Are we even going to do this? Am I going to, are we going to cancel the whole thing? How's it going to go? But I knew that if I didn't do something, I wasn't going to get brought to Japan and made a star in New Japan Pro Wrestling. So
wait. So they said 25 grand for a real fight, 5 grand for a fake fight. They renegotiated verbally, nothing on paper.
That's right.
Okay. Wow.
So we agree, me, the referee, Montenegro, the managers, both cornermen, everybody, Inoki's son-in-law, that I'm going to just knee him in the nuts and get disqualified. And then I'll go to Japan and be a pro wrestler.
You'll be the bad guy. Yeah.
Yeah, the heel.
So we go into the ring, and
what were you wearing? This is great.
I was wearing a singlet. It was
with USA written on the back.
Yeah, I didn't bring any gear with me. Somebody gave me that. And anyway, it was terrible. The whole thing was terrible. There was he had great music coming out. I had no music. And Mike goes, hey, I got this CD. And he starts playing some song. It's just totally inappropriate, And anyway, this is my, walking out music.
How were the bugs? This is an outdoor event in the middle of the Amazon jungle. How were the bugs?
Oh, they're awful. And it was a weird place too, because there was like bridges. Everything was connected with bridges and trees.
They're in the middle of a swamp.
There's no land.
They're in the middle of a swamp outside.
Yeah,
Alligators.
the buildings are built inside the trees, like tree houses. And these are huge buildings too. I mean, these guys have mastered the tree house building method.
Hey, I got a question for you. You mentioned Inoki's son or son-in-law in the meetings and stuff. Was Inoki there? Because I'd always heard that he jumped in the river.
I thought he jumped into the river.
No, he did that one time. He jumped in the river, and it's all put for publicity.
But he was there then.
He was there. But he had nothing to do with the meetings.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. So he was just there out of the way, or you couldn't touch him.
Right. He actually rented a huge yacht and had it parked in the middle of the Amazon. He just sat in that yacht the whole time. Anyway, so the fight comes around, and we hadn't practiced anything, and things didn't go as planned. And he was expecting me to like knee him in the nuts probably right off the bat. And I thought it should probably go a little bit longer. And so I waited a little bit longer. And then it just seemed like, because we didn't really know what we were doing, it started to like become apparent that this was all staged. And the people
Not a single punch was thrown.
Yeah, they were starting to notice, It
was awful.
So I think Montenegro just thought, I better do something real. So he jumps into the guard, pulls me down the guard, and then we're just sitting there, and I'm like, how I can't punch you I can't knee you in the nuts from this position. I can't disqualify myself from this position. And I didn't know what was going to happen. And then he throws a triangle on me. Well, I'm thinking that he's just, doing something, it's just another move in the match, Well, then I noticed he's really got a tight triangle on me. He's really trying to choke me out. And I'm when you get tunnel vision and I'm like, okay. And I tap, and afterwards I saw him like giving an interview to some Amazon TV something. And he was all excited. And he's like, yeah, And then afterwards, me and my corner man and Inoki's son, we confronted him, and we started going, you screwed up. You screwed me over. You ruined my career. You ruined my record. We're really pissed. All of us are really pissed. And then I go over and I talk to Inoki in the main lodge house, motel house or whatever. And basically what I want to confirm with him is that he's going to bring me to Japan and make me a star. Well, he's like, oh, yeah, we're going to do that for sure. Well, I never heard from him again.
How much did he pay you?
Huh?
How much did he pay you?
$5,000.
So Stephan Bonner was getting paid right after you. And they had said, Stephan Bonner. He was on the card as well. He fought, come on, not Kung Lee. Come on, Japanese karate. Or
Lyoto Machida.
Machida. He fought Lyoto. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
On the card. So they said it got a little loud in there when they had to shut the door. So when you were having your discussion, it wasn't a normal conversational level. And when you got out of there, and if you look at Mark's reaction when he lost the fight, you were stuck in the middle between being confused and angry. You were like putting everything together, like,
yeah, it's not adding
you weren't
up.
sure if you were to act out. You weren't sure if you should like start tearing the lights off, from the ceiling. There was a moment there where it could have been really bad for a lot of people, and I'm not sure many people could have handled you there had you gone that route.
Well, I still had the hope that I was going to be made into a professional wrestling star. And when I finally realized that, I mean, I waited for like 3 months for him to call me and bring me to Japan. He never did. And finally I realized this guy's never going to call me. And so I went on social media and I exposed the Jungle Fight as the first event that ever mixed fake matches with real matches. And when I did that, that got Inoki's attention. And then he called me and he says, "You haven't received your threats." And I'm like, "I haven't threatened you. I'm just telling the truth." And he goes, "You know, there's still an opportunity for us to work together." I'm like, "No, there isn't." And he's like, "Okay, have a good day, whatever." And yeah, that was it.
Man, so I have a question here now. So you have like after the first your first UFC appearance, was there never any more talk? Did you never talk to them again about another role in there, or how did that just never materialize?
When I fought in the UFC, it was really like a huge event in Utah's media because, first of all, I'm LDS, and I'm also a faculty member at BYU. And here I am competing in no-holds-barred cage fighting. It's banned in 49 states. And I win, and it's a bloody fight. And they take a picture of me, color picture, and they put it on the cover of the Salt Lake Tribune. And a lot of LDS women got really offended that, and one of them wrote into the president that she didn't think it was becoming conduct of a Latter-day Saint to turn one of God's children into hamburger. So this quote made its way through the media. I might have even repeated it. I don't remember, but I got called on the carpet, and the president, they had just switched presidents. Now BYU's got a new president. His name's Merrill Bateman. And this guy is like a hatchet man. He's cutting programs left and right. And so he calls me on the carpet in his office. This is right afterwards, right after they put this colored picture of me with blood on the ground on the cover of the Salt Lake Tribune. And he brings me in his office and he goes, "Mark, what you did here is not what BYU is about." And he goes, "You can keep your job, but you can't continue doing this, or you can continue doing it, but you can't keep your job." Well, I had 3 kids with needed health insurance, and there's really no guarantees if you're going to continue fighting in cage fighting with no rules, no weight classes, no gloves, just and the only person who's going to get paid is the winner. Then you have to win.
No brainer.
Lose, you not only didn't get paid, you have a bunch of hospital bills you got to pay. Well, I thought it was better for me to keep my job, keep my kids' health insurance. And
that makes sense. That makes sense.
I didn't really have much else of a choice.
Yeah. Okay. Would you mind if we delve a little bit into your wrestling career? But prior to that, we throw some names at you so we can kind of get some feedback on some of the more prominent wrestlers that made it into the mixed martial arts scene?
You bet.
All right. Miguel, would you like to start?
Who? Sure, yeah, well, that's me. I'm going to start off with a couple of names here. You know, you're the elite of the elite. We're going to try to stick to like real high level wrestlers of like your peers that also dabbled in MMA and see what you think. You know, like Mark Coleman, obviously, he did real well. He had the mindset. What about Rico Chipparelli, who you mentioned? He was like known like you as a guy who got jiu-jitsu early. Is that accurate? Were you aware of him as a threat in the MMA world? What did you think of him?
Well, he started a company, or I think it was a management company called Raw, Real American Wrestling. And he had Randy Couture as a client and some other guys. I think he had like 5 clients. And he was negotiating their contracts for him. And so, yeah, he was one of the first guys besides me to really get into jiu-jitsu and the mixed martial arts game. So I have a great amount of respect for Rico. I've wrestled him a lot, and we've had some really, really brutal matches.
How about Randy Couture? What are you thoughts on him?
You know, I've never wrestled Randy. He was a weight class or two above me, and I have a great amount of respect for him, not only because he's a great fighter, but because he made his way into Hollywood. He got in that door, and it's very difficult to do.
Well,
And so, yeah, he's a great fighter, great guy too. I think he's a very spiritual guy, which I like.
Okay, so back to Rico Chipparelli for a second. Were you privy to what was going on when Tom Erickson fought Mario Bustamante? Chipparelli was in Erickson's corner, and he ended up getting thrown out of Henzo's gym because of it. They weren't happy that he was in Erickson's corner. What did you hear around that time in regards to like that situation?
Well, I didn't really hear anything, but I knew because they were both wrestlers that they would be sort of aligned with each other because, you know, birds of a feather flock together. Jiu-jitsu guys tended to, you know, hang out with jiu-jitsu guys and wrestlers with wrestlers. So I didn't really have the details of why he was in the corner, but I mean, it made sense to me. I mean, Rico's one of the top first guys to really discover jiu-jitsu in America, along with me. And so he's, you know, helping Erickson deal with these guys that are master jiu-jitsu fighters.
Okay. So you had mentioned Chael Sonnen earlier. What was it like having him in the wrestling room?
Oh man, I knew from the moment I put my hands on him, this guy is going to be a monster. I just knew it from the first moment. I mean, it wasn't just his physicality, it was his mentality. He just had this nonstop. He's a force of nature. He's a just, what do they call it? A immovable object meets the whatever.
Unstoppable force.
Unstoppable force. He's an unstoppable force.
Yeah. He seemed like somebody to be real good to have in that room with you. You know, kind of keep it light, and you know, lots of trash talk, which is always good in a wrestling room.
Yeah, he got together with this guy, a friend of mine named Will McCleve, when they first came to BYU, and Will ended up having to leave because of some stuff he did. Wasn't really good, but I mean, Will's a great guy, and so is Chael, but I think their influence on each other wasn't that healthy. And BYU is the most clean, dry, sober school in the nation. You have to sign a contract agreeing, this is an honor code contract you have to sign to agree not to have sex before marriage. Now, who is going to sign that contract except LDS kids? Well, Chael signed it. But, and I don't know whether he kept that or not, but it's a very difficult school to keep all of the honor codes.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. All right. So Miguel, tell me to.
Yeah. I was gonna go back a little ways, and another guy who dabbled, and I don't think he knew jiu-jitsu, but he was a hell of a wrestler. Kevin Jackson. Do you remember Kevin Jackson? And what'd you think of him dabbling in MMA?
Well, didn't he win the Ultimate Fighting Championships?
I believe he won a couple of matches and then took a loss to Jerry Bolander.
Yeah. Armbar.
Okay. Well, I know his first experience, he lost to Frank Shamrock.
And that was like a submission only match, right? And that was in the Contenders. And then
Right.
then Bolander's Shamrock student submitted him in the UFC.
Right. Well, that tells you kind of, this is all part of the evolution of the sport and how wrestlers had to learn submissions and boxing and Muay Thai. And, you know, this all had to happen. You know, this was gradually happening. And, you know, these four martial arts were gradually coming together to create one martial art, for the UFC. And, the guys that weren't, introduced early enough to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu were kind of at a disadvantage. And I think that's what happened to Kevin. He was at a disadvantage simply because he didn't know those techniques. But you show a wrestler any submission hold, they can do it like that. It's just like learning a switch or a stand-up, but they have to see it first.
Yep, that's interesting. Now, what do you credit that to? Because like wrestling, like a lot of wrestlers have that mentality back then of wrestling's enough, or we got this, and you kind of learn the hard way. What made you so open-minded? What was the difference there?
Well, Rickson tapped me out for one thing.
Yeah, choked.
The choke.
Strangled tends to change your opinion.
Yeah. No, hands-on learning is none better.
Okay, so we're going to move on to his collegiate career. Your freshman year was at UCLA. You go 18-8, and you wrestle at 150 and 158. What was the reason for the weight change?
My coach, Dave Obel, who's a great coach, by the way. He was fourth in the Olympics, two-time NCAA champion, outstanding wrestler in the NCAAs. He grew up in the era where, everybody just cut their balls off to make weight. And, he thought that if I did that would be an advantage for me. But I was a gymnast. I was so lean. I didn't have the fat to cut. I could only cut by dehydrating, and dehydrating really crushes your conditioning. And so I cut down to 50, and it was so hard. And I lost 4 matches on one road trip during that road trip. And that's, half my losses for that year. And after I got back from that road trip, I mentally changed. And I said, I'm never going to listen to anybody tell me what weight I can wrestle again. I'm going to become my own best coach, which I think happens to everybody along the way somewhere. They just come to the realization that they have to be their own best coach. And that's, part of the learning process. And that's what happened to me. And I never wrestled any weight class I didn't think was going to keep me, because wrestling is so hard anyway. I mean, it's just, you're basically pushing yourself to suffocation until like 4 or 5 times a day. And if you add cutting weight on top of that, it's going to kill your motivation. It's going to burn you out pretty fast. So I try to just train as hard as I can, forget about the weight cutting, and just whatever weight I'm naturally at, I just cut to whatever weight was right below that. And that was all the weight cutting I would do. Like in 1977 in college, I only cut 2 pounds to make 77. I went up from 167 to 177.
Okay, so actually that's where we're at right now. You go from UCLA, you transfer to University of Oklahoma. I'm assuming it's to be with your brother, Dave.
No, Dave was at Oklahoma State. And then I went to UC. They recruited me to Oklahoma State. And that's where Dave wrestled his freshman year. He was 33-3, I think. And he was named freshman of the year. And then I miraculously won the state. I didn't win any tournaments my high school senior year, except I went to 2 tournaments. I took 3rd at one. I didn't place at the other. But at the end of the year, I won the league, the region, the section, and the state. This is in California with 1,000 schools.
He's got a year of wrestling, and he wins state. That's nuts. In California, the huge state of California.
It was a miracle. I started.
It's impossible.
And now, do you feel like the reason you probably won just towards the end, like you're about 1.5 years in, you're really just starting to learn wrestling. You're really starting to learn what the sport is. And then you said, okay, and you start dominating. Is that what happened?
Yeah, gymnastics helped me a lot, but it didn't help me as far as the conditioning goes. I didn't realize just how, when I realized the conditioning was king of wrestling. Technique is king of gymnastics. Conditioning is king of wrestling. And when I finally got, to the point where I felt like I was superior. I had superior conditioning. I had superior technique, or at least as good of technique and conditioning as everybody else. But because I was a gymnast, I knew I had an athletic advantage. I could do things nobody else could do. And so I used to work out with Stanford guys, and I used to do pretty good against them. When I grew 30 pounds between my junior and senior year in high school, I'd work out with Stanford guys. And these college guys are like head and shoulders above high school guys, all of them. And so I was doing good against them, which gave me a lot of confidence that I could beat anybody in high school because I'm beating these guys in college. And so at the end of the year, even though I hadn't won anything prior to the state qualifiers, I knew I was good enough to win. Now you got to base your confidence on experience. I didn't have any experience, but I had a very important Eastern Indian philosopher named J. Krishnamurti that affected me dramatically. And he taught me about living in the present and observing my mind, observing the world without judgment, and just seeing things for what is, not what should be, and just living in the moment. And so when I went to the state championship or anywhere else, I would look at the bracket sheet and I'd see who my next match was, and then I'd walk away. I didn't care anything beyond that next match. It just didn't exist. It's another life. And so my life is now. And so I used his philosophies combined with wrestling to do something miraculous. I mean, I believe it was so miraculous. I started to believe in God. And I really did. Anyway, then nobody knew who I was because I came out of nowhere at the end of the year. I mean, they knew.
No, they didn't even know how to study you. You know what I mean? Usually wrestlers go against each other 2 or 3 times. They had no idea what they were in front of, for sure.
Right. And all the scholarships were given away because I came out of nowhere at the last minute. So the scholarships were all gone except Oklahoma State, where Dave was, and UCLA, which a bunch of my friends and were going. And so I thought if I went to UCLA, Oklahoma State on a recruiting trip, and they told me, well, they offered me a full ride. They didn't even care about me. They wanted to keep Dave. They knew Dave was unhappy. He was so they offered me a scholarship to get him. And so,
wow.
So, but Dave told me he wasn't happy at Oklahoma State and he was thinking of leaving. So I thought, even if Dave was happy and I went to Oklahoma State, I've only been wrestling 16 months. How am I going to compete against these murderers in Oklahoma State wrestling? These are college national champions. They're going to destroy, confidence is either built or destroyed every day. And these guys are going to destroy my confidence before I even get a chance to build it up to where I can defend myself adequately or minimally adequately anyway. And so I decided to take an intermediate step and go to UCLA first. So I go to UCLA, and then Dave, he's miserable at Oklahoma State. He transfers to come to UCLA with me. And then there was a lot of problems at UCLA with the coaching staff always fighting with each other. And it was a rinky-dink program. It didn't have any money. Nobody showed up at the matches. Nobody cared about wrestling. And plus, I mean, you're so distracted. You got movie stars everywhere, it's sunny every day. The beach is right down the street.
There's no winter.
Yeah. And so it was a great place to have a freshman year. But then we thought, because this is such a rinky-dink program, nobody cares. If we win a national championship for this program, it'll be a miracle. So instead, what we need to do is go someplace where instead of it being a miracle, they expect it. So we decided to go to Oklahoma, where we knew they would expect us to win. The crowds were big. Wrestling was important. There's nothing to do on the Great Plains except beat the shit out of each other. Let's just go there.
So you get redshirted. This is where it gets interesting. So your junior year, sophomore year, you won at 167. Am I correct?
That's right.
Okay, so then did Matt Reşit, was he a runner-up at 167?
He was the national champion in 1980. I was the 167 national champion in 1981.
Okay. So your junior year, and please excuse me, I've done as much research as I can, but there's very little available, including videotape of what is transpiring at this time in wrestling. Your junior year, you move up to 177, so your brother can wrestle at 167. And while in the tournament, you run into Matt Reşit in the quarterfinals, correct?
No, I never wrestled Matt Reşit.
I don't know where I got that then.
You're talking about John Reich.
No, I read Matt Reşit.
1981.
Okay.
What year are you talking about?
I'm talking about your junior year.
Okay, I didn't wrestle Reşit in my junior year.
Okay, because you had a hell of a run. Okay, so
I
let's
never
subtract
wrestled
that.
Reşit ever.
So you run into Ed Banach in the finals, future gold medalist. And you're up a weight class, technically speaking, because you let your brother come in at 167, correct?
Right.
Okay. Why don't you walk us through that? It's an incredible match.
It didn't just let my brother in at 167. It also made the team tougher because when I first got to Oklahoma, there was this killer named Israel Shepherd, black dude, built like Hercules, cornrowed his hair. He used to drive those cornrows into my face and scrape all the skin off. You ever feel a guy's cornrow hair is like steel wool? And he's just grinding the hair off. And so I'd like take a shower afterwards and sting like crazy. One day the padding was wearing away from my Cliff Keen headgear. And he went to headbutt me. And I turned and I cut him with the metal underneath. So I took a file and I sharpened it up to a razor's edge and I just cut him to ribbons. No, I'm kidding. I didn't do it.
That's awful. I love it. All right, so Ed Banach.
It made room. Man, being going up to 77, Stan Abel, he had a problem because he's got me, Dave, and Israel all in only 2 weight classes. So the year we went there, he wrestled Israel at 58. And then the next year, he redshirted Israel. I went 67. Dave went 58. The next year, I moved up to 77. Dave moved up to 67. And Israel moved in and wrestled at 158. So the team was really good.
Solid. So the 1982 college finals, it's on ABC Wide World of Sports in Ames, Iowa. And you pull up with Ed Banach in the finals.
Yeah, this is the first time an NCAA match has been shown in its entirety on ABC Wide World of Sports.
It's nuts.
It is nuts, you know.
It's nuts.
Some of the comments and stuff below, people are like, wrestling was different back then. You know, it's not true at all. But it was crazy. And Ed and I, you know, we had a history with each other. You know, he beat me 4 times before. We wrestled 3 times that year. He won the first one. I won the dual meet in the second one 1 month before the NCAA finals. And so, you know, he was on track to become the first 4-timer.
And let's put this in a proper context. When you beat him, it was 10-9. It was 1 point.
The dual meet was, yes,
at the dual meet. So I mean,
I was losing with 2 seconds left, and I did a fireman's carry to a limp arm, and then I ran the pipe, and they gave me 2, and time ran out 2 seconds later. It was a very close match.
Yeah, it's a dogfight. It's a dogfight for sure.
The lead kept changing through the whole match, you know.
So let's put in the proper context of who Ed Banach is. His older brother's a heavyweight, future Olympian as well.
Olympic champion.
So you got 2 brothers, 2 sets of brothers, 4 gold medals between the Schultz brothers and the Banach brothers. Banach is one of 14 children, 3 of which are on the same team in Iowa. Like that's a rough house. That's a rough house.
Oh yeah, those guys are tough, really tough. Ed Banach His nickname is the Horse. Well, I think the reason they call him the Horse is because he can run like a horse. When I was I was out at the World Team Training Camp with him. He ran a 5-minute mile.
Oh, Jesus.
Jesus. Okay. First period. You go up and you're pummeling. You're going chest to chest. And right away, like you're super aggressive. Like you're a really aggressive wrestler to begin with. Kind of like it's almost like a fist fight watching you go. You immediately go after him. Like there's no feeling out. Let's figure this out. It was two schoolyard bullies going, nope, let's do it. And you go for a high risk move. And I think you go for a throw and upper body throw. Inside trip. Go ahead, take us through it. This is fantastic, man.
I bet you can watch this all on YouTube.
I've watched it twice.
It's somebody named it the most entertaining match in NCAA history, which is kind of interesting because somebody just put the match with me against the Turk, and he said this is the most dramatic match in Olympic wrestling history. Anyway, I'm wrestling Banach. I tried an inside trip. It doesn't work. I did it. I didn't even do it right, and I fell right on
Once you're back, yeah.
And I gave away 4 points right away from the start. And so
5 seconds in.
Yeah. So I reversed him. So now it's 4-2. He escapes. Now it's 5-2. Now I'm thinking, I have got to try something extremely high risk. I got to try a throw because I'm out of this match. Trying to claw my way back from this kind of a deficit is going to be too hard. I need a high scoring throw. So I kind of, in a way, I kind of like acted like I didn't want to be in the upper body tie so that he would attack my upper body tie. And as soon as me and him locked up, we're locked up, standing straight up. I've never seen two guys like that in the NCAA standing up like that, locked up like that with just one, both guys ready to throw. So I had never seen this move before. I saw a video of Ben Peterson do it to the Russian in the World Cup, and I thought, I got to go for something. I'm just going to go for it. So I tried, and I basically tried to kick him right in the groin area and then elevate his hips off the ground and turn and drop him. And it worked. It was a miracle. And I got 4 points out of it. And after that, I kept my lead and I kept
the period ends at 6-5. And Ed is on his way to this is his junior year. He's a 2-time national champ, looking to be the first 4-time college national champ. And these guys are in a fist fight. So the second period, you start referee position.
Yeah, I should tell you that there was a book that came out called The Golden Era of Amateur Wrestling, 1980s. And it was voted by my peers that I was the best wrestler of the 80s. Well, the number 2 best wrestler, the guy voted second, was Ed Banach. What are the chances that the number 1 and 2 guy would meet same year, same weight class in the NCAA finals? It's pretty rare. So second period, I'm down.
You're on the bottom too. Yeah.
I escape and then I take him down and then he reverses me.
You score 7 points in a row.
Right.
Which is nuts. And you're up 9-5.
Right. And so he reverses me. I think it's 9-7 now, but I'm riding him. I had this really good riding, escaping concept that I used to employ all the time. And I never told anybody about it because it's so simple, but I didn't want to give away my secrets. So I never told anybody. And because of that, I always got riding time on my guys and I always got escapes. And so I had like 3.5 minutes riding time on him, I think, by the end of the match, which gave me an extra point. So at the end of the match, The score is 8-10. But I have writing time. So it's 11-10. So I know he has to go for a throw. And I know he's got a good lateral drop. So he escapes at the very end, making it 8-10. And I circle, we lock up, upper body tie again for the second or third or fourth time. And I back up into the center of the ring because I know he's got to go for a throw. And I'm just waiting for it so that I can just, turn into a wet noodle and block him off. So that's what I did. That's what he did. And that's what happened. I caught him on his back and for 5.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was nuts. It's so entertaining. I'm telling everybody, you guys are going to want to go watch a fun wrestling match. That's it. And, we're finishing up right here, but let's just do your Olympic run. We're a MMA history podcast, but I haven't seen an interview with an in-depth analysis of some of your more significant matches. Obviously, there's a lot of them. Your 1984 Olympic run, 82 kilograms. Your opening match is against the European champion from Turkey, Reşit Karabacak.
Karabacak.
Yeah, I knew I was going to miss that. All right. You almost get disqualified. Walk us through it.
I did get disqualified from the match, but not the tournament.
I thought they were considering that. They even hired somebody to follow you around to make sure you were following the rules.
It wasn't just me. It was my brother, too, because my brother hurt the Yugoslav's knee the match before I broke the Turk's arm. So they're like, what's up with these Schultz guys? So they got Mario Soletnik, the #1 referee in the world, to monitor all of our matches, see if we were doing dirty moves.
I have a question. Was that like the what I consider more of the Kimura with the arm when you jack it over? Is that how you were hurting the arm?
Yeah, Kimura. I called it a double wrist lock 10 years before the Brazilians came and renamed it.
I mean, man, I would use that quite a bit, even when I was coaching wrestling. But you couldn't bring the arm up. I said you have to drive into people, and they would say, "Yeah, that's what Schultz used to do," and he'd hurt people, and they changed the rule because of that.
Yeah, they made a rule.
Yeah.
That
day, no one saw it though.
It wasn't the rule then,
Right.
No,
they made the rule because of you.
That's right.
Because you know why? Because it works.
That's right. And I'm an American. They don't like it.
So with you and Reşit, when you guys start, imagine like 2 flies just kind of going at it, how fast they would be, and you'd like trying to figure out, which one's which. I couldn't believe just the speed between you and Reşit in that short exchange before you hit him with a Kimura.
Yeah, I mean, he was the #1 ranked wrestler in the world. He beat all the Russians that boycotted the Olympics.
Wow.
And I was weighing in, and the way you do weigh-ins in the Olympics is you step on a scale and you reach into a bucket after you make weight, and then you pull this egg open and it's got a number in it. And if you have an odd number, you go on the odd side of the bracket. If you got an even number, you go on the even side of the bracket. And then the winner of the odd bracket wrestles the winner of the even bracket for the gold medal. Well, I pull out the number 6. Well, Reşit Karabacak standing right behind me. And he gets on his ways in. And he pulls out the number 8. So 2 wrestles 4, 6 wrestles 8. I am pissing my pants right now. I got the gold medal match, my very first match. I am scared out of my mind. This is only my second international tournament. I'm like, okay, this one's for all the marbles. I go back to my room. I sit on my bed and I'm sweating like a pig, just looking at the wall. I can't even watch TV. I'm just staring, sweating, waiting. And so the match comes.
That sounds healthy. It's kind of sounds like a Saturday night to me, but go ahead.
Yeah. My mom comes in and she's like, let's go over to Disneyland and get something to eat. I'm like, are you out of your freaking mind? Women. Anyway, I first move of the match, he does this limp arm to a high crotch. And
How deep was that?
huh?
How deep was he on that high crotch?
Oh, he was in deep as you can get.
Dude, the speed on this guy, it was insane how fast he was.
Yes. And I had never done this move before in competition or practice or anything. Only thing
So
was,
what inspired it?
I was wrestling in the Pan Am Games, and I saw this Cuban, this lightweight Cuban, do it to some guy from Paraguay or Uruguay or one of those Guay countries. And he just threw it. And when I saw that, I go, that's locked. You can't escape that. It's locked. And I thought, it's him or me. And it's going to be me. And I just threw it. I didn't expect him. Man, what happened in Pan Am's was the guy rolled through and gave away 2 points. He kicked him in the groin and made him do a head over heels forward roll and got 2 points for it. Well, that's what I thought was going to happen. But he hit his head halfway through, stopping his momentum. And I just held on to the elbow. And it snapped instantly. I mean, as soon as it snapped. So I blame him. No, I'm kidding.
Well, hey, he should have rolled like the Uruguay guy or Paraguay, whatever it is.
The Guay.
I blame him. There's a lot of blame to go around.
Well, you were enemy number one in Turkey at this time, too. The entire country, Miguel, you're on. I apologize. The entire country of Turkey was furious with you.
They were. They hate me.
Miguel?
But, I went to Turkey afterwards, and I'm a bigger star over there than I am in America. Matter of fact, this cop saw me walking on the street. He's like, Mark Schultz. And I'm like, yeah, how'd you know that? What are you going through my laundry? What's going on? And he goes, come with me. And he brings me to this photographer's office, and he forces the photographer to take pictures of him and me together.
Wow.
That's weird. Okay.
I know.
So your gold medal match. Miguel, you got something? Go ahead, Miguel.
I was just gonna point out winning that match, though. I mean, wrestling at that level is known as being, I don't know if it's crooked is the right word, but complicated.
There's a lot of politics.
There's a lot of politics. Did you experience any of that other than the drawing the bracket? Do you think that was something that was stacked against you, or do you have to have that mentality? What were all your thoughts, all your paranoid thoughts from back there?
You mean during the Olympics or when I was
84 Olympics?
Yeah.
Oh, during the Olympics? Well, I knew the international wrestling is notoriously anti-American. I mean, every time we do something that works, there's always a rule against it the next year, or there's a limitation of how many times you can do something. It's always something. When I did that double wrist lock, instantly there's a rule against it. Dave does his front headlock, there's instantly a rule against it. I almost beat the Russian with all gut wrenches. They limit it to 2 gut wrenches, the very next rule against. It's always something. And, Rulon Gardner beats Karillon. Now they lower the weight class to 265. So it's always. So yeah, I was aware of it, but you can't really think about that. It's not really. It doesn't really affect your matches. What affects your matches is your technique and conditioning and luck. The politics. It exists in everything, and it exists on its own, even though it may invade everything. It's something that athletes are too consumed with their own situation. They can't even think about what's going on behind the scenes politically.
Okay, after your match, your fight with Reşit, what was the conversations like on the sidelines? Because you're celebrating, and people were just trying to figure out, wait, what just happened here? We got to figure this out. He was wronged. We don't know how it was like, here's the finish line. How do we make it get there? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like a different type of situation where 2 or 3 hours later, you found out what you did because then they couldn't figure it out. What was that situation like?
Well, after I broke his elbow and he fell on his back, they called him pinned. And I was like, yes, I got the number one guy out of the tournament.
In under a minute.
So happy. I couldn't believe it. It was like
One move.
God, yeah, first move of the whole tournament. And so I had another match that day, and I won that match, and then I went up and I was sitting in the bleachers.
That helps. If
And
you
my-
hadn't had that match, I think your situation would have been different.
Well,
Do you know what I mean? It's too late. You're already in.
The second match.
Yep.
right, and any judgment calls that happen on the field of play cannot be reversed after the fact. So I'm sitting in the stands and I hear over the loudspeakers, Mark Schultz has just been disqualified against Turkey for excessive brutality. And my mom is sitting next to me. She freaks out. She thinks I've been thrown out of the tournament. I'm just sitting there like, don't worry about it. It's double elimination. He's out of the tournament. Therefore, I can still win the gold if I keep winning. She didn't process that. Like, I already had all that process. So. Anyway, that's
He's
all.
under police questioning. He's already got the answer to the question. That's what that is.
I got a quick one for you. If the situation were reversed, is there any doubt in your mind that that Turk would have broke your arm?
Would have broke my arm?
Yeah, like if the situation was reversed,
Well, considering,
the stakes.
his experiences and stuff. If his experiences were exactly, if he was me, yeah, he would have done the same thing. I mean, I didn't intend to hurt him. The fact that he hit his head is his fault. No, I'm kidding. It's not his fault.
But he wasn't prepared. Like he didn't roll with it right.
It was an accident. It was a freak accident.
Okay. So what were your coaches telling you after that announcement comes over the loudspeaker?
Nothing. Oh, well, Gable was interviewed by a couple of reporters and he's like, this is a man's sport.
That's cool.
I love it.
Saying things that might get him canceled today. That's good.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
good.
Yeah, we live in a different.
Because there's women in the sport now.
Yeah.
So you guys got to see his gold medal match. All right. So in essence, they should have split him and Reşit up on opposite ends of the bracket because he gets like a 31-year-old high school teacher in the finals from Japan named Hideyuki Nagashima.
Hey,
Dude, he was shitting bricks. And I'm saying that like literally, not figuratively. He was going to the bathroom in his own pants.
oh,
Well,
I
he
wanna
made
hear
it to the finals. I gotta give him credit.
Yeah. He was scared. So in essence, you guys start the match. You're fist fighting in a wrestling match. Headbutt his chin. And it was almost as if he didn't want to continue. He was almost looking for a way out.
Silver's good.
Huh? What he said?
Silver's
Silver's
good.
good.
Silver's good.
Silver.
Yeah.
Good for them. I wouldn't want.
I
I
understand.
only have 3 silver medals in my entire life and no bronze.
Wow.
That's fantastic. Okay. Well, we've been going almost 2 hours now. So we've taken a ton of your time. And can I get one? Did you replace Mark Kerr in a tournament when he tore an abdominal muscle?
No.
Bad news. Okay. Go ahead. Sorry, Chris.
No problem. Hey man, Mark, we really thank you for your time, and the Olympic gold is fantastic. Thank you for doing that for us, and just the overall wrestling mentality you have exuded, and just trying to lead people in the right direction, man. If you can wrestle hard like that, look at that. You can do anything in the world, and you've proven that. And just thank you for what you've done for everybody and your time for us going over these stories.
Wait, Cuba. Did you see the Cubans selling their gold medals there?
Selling my gold medals?
No, them. Some of the Cuban athletes. I heard people go to the Olympics and they pay $1,500 to $2,000 and try to get the Cubans to sell their medals. Did you see any of that?
I never even heard of that.
Teddy Atlas did a whole segment on it. It's fantastic. All right, go ahead, Chris. I'm done.
That's all. Miguel, you got anything?
No, Mark, I want to thank you too, because I definitely, no one else, you're a legend. There's no doubt about it. And
Savage.
And that honors us to really have it along on the podcast. I'm very grateful for the time. It's fantastic. And I think that we had a great conversation. I learned so much that I'm going to want to have you back, dude.
Yeah, I'll come back anytime. Thanks for having me, guys. It's an honor.
Appreciate it, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Well, coming off another deep dive interview, Chris doesn't like to do these outros with us, does he? But
he's on the road today.
Mark Schultz is in the books, and I think we got a landmark interview. Mike, what you think? First impressions?
I thought he was brutally honest with us, and I've done a little bit of research on his other interviews. He tends to kind of run on a track, and our goal going into this was to kind of get him off of that, so we can hit him with some questions, maybe make it a little uncomfortable at times, just to kind of come back around and smooth it out. And I think we accomplished it. That's, in my opinion, that's one of our better interviews.
Yeah, what I like about him is that he's not into my wheelhouse. I'm not a wrestling person. I'm an MMA person. But I think that I was kind of watching him, and his body language, I really think he just enjoyed the interview. And I think that that's a feather in our cap, because he's not an easy interview, and I think I think we did the right thing, avoiding all the big story of Foxcatcher and stuff like that, because I think and even his brother, although maybe we haven't back to talk just about his brother and not whatever it is, but I think that we focused on Mark. I don't think he's gotten that treatment in a few years.
No.
And I think
Miguel, he's never had that treatment. Yeah. Like, Dave is such his brother that passed is such just a huge figure in the sport of wrestling that Mark doesn't even get the credit he deserves. And if you look at his accomplishments, I mean, we started it out like his brother was incredible, but what he did was impossible. Like, those are two descriptors that, to meet that threshold of both it's ridiculous. And both of them have done it. So he's really never had his own interview. And our goal was to provide that, because it's more than deserved.
Yeah, and the ties, he fought in UFC, and it's always interesting to me, the crossover guys, how nonchalant they are about, they're paying me, so I'll fight. It's like martial artists in MMA don't do that anymore. Like, show up at a show, it's like, hey, I'll jump in for my teammate. I don't see any of that happening anymore.
Well, Miguel, let's look at his crossroads. All right. He's a junior in high school when he starts wrestling. Well, what got him there? Well, I thought I could beat up my brother, and my brother beat me up so badly that I knew that I needed to get into wrestling. Okay, so then what makes him excel at jiu-jitsu? Yeah, this guy called up talking, smack about some guy coming to the gym to beat me up. And guess what? The guy choked me out twice. And now look at me. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So it's like, if you could beat him, it motivated him.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a guy, that inner drive to be the best is like not something you teach. It's just, he found it.
And I'll tell you where we missed. The one question, I even had it written down, I really wish it would have came out. In athletes like him and like Coleman, it's, okay, are you motivated more to win, or do you hate losing? Which of those plays a bigger role in your psyche when competing? Because Coleman hates losing. I have a feeling, although obviously both love winning, their hatred of losing outweighs, their love of winning. It's just, I
think indirectly he backed you up, because he showed us his gold medal at some point in the interview, so he's still he's proud, and not to mince words, he kind of shit on silver medals. He was like, I'm not interested,
Yeah.
I like to lose, so I don't know.
So we're going to have Mark back. Obviously, we're an MMA podcast. I'm a novice wrestling watcher. I know the sport. I enjoy it. I think what we need to do, and there's not a lot that I can take in order to kind of get my questions together. We need to talk about when him and his brother, after winning the gold medal, went to Russia to give those Russian athletes the opportunity to beat them, because they didn't hide behind their gold medal. You know, they went and said, okay, well, Russians weren't in the Olympics at this time. We will come to you because we know you're, you know, the most dominant force in wrestling. So I think that alone just speaks volumes of just how insanely competitive both the Schultz brothers were.
It just as a tie-in, I may be off on this, but I also think that that's the trip that a young Mark Coleman said made him into a man.
Yes.
So
yes, in our interview with Mark, that's what he did say. Yes.
So
Absolutely.
very, very interesting tie-ins to what we're trying to do here. I do think that we bit off a big chunk of history, and thank you to Mark Schultz for joining us.
That was fun.
And for having a lot of fun. Yeah. So definitely worth it.
One more thing. We got to get our plugs. BetDSI. Guys, we've got a promo code. If you enjoyed this interview, please go to betdsi.eu and use our promo code LytesOut. You get a 50% cash advance of whatever it is you deposit, to play in our casino or gamble on a sporting event. Please betdsi.eu, promo code LytesOut. With that, Miguel, I think we're done.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.